I know that the title of this video alone is making a lot of you very unhappy, but I honestly believe that if you are a true fan of a series, you need to give that series criticism when the time is right. And I feel like the time for Jujutsu Kaisen criticism is right now. Let's take a look back to around 7 to 8 months ago. Jujutsu Kaisen stood alone on the top of a mountain, untouchable by every other manga series. Gojo vs Sukuna was currently going on, and this was the biggest thing that was happening in all of anime at the time. Every fan base was in on Jujutsu Kaisen. Even if you weren't a Jujutsu Kaisen fan, you knew everything that was going on in the fight between Gojo vs Sukuna. This fight got so big that it reached outside the anime community. Everybody knew about this. This was practically a global event that was going on. This was undoubtedly one of the biggest fights we've seen in anime and manga since Goku versus Jiren. And I'm not even exaggerating. The Gojo versus Sukuna fight was making waves. Jujutsu Kaisen itself had placed itself on a different level compared to every other manga out. And then 6 months ago, the Gojo versus Sukuna fight finally concluded with Sukuna being our victor. One of the biggest fights in all of anime and manga had finished. However, Jujutsu Kaisen's popularity did not die down in the slightest. In fact, things were only ramping up because we were getting new fighters entering the fight to battle against Sukuna. We had Kashimo, who was hyped up to be the third strongest character in the entire verse, ready to run ones with Sukuna, and we were ready to watch another repeat of Gojo vs Sukuna. But unfortunately, we didn't get that, and many people, including myself, were extremely disappointed with the outcome of the fight. But we weren't really worried because we still had so many more characters to go and so many more moments to get through. Higuruma and Yuji finally jump into the fight with Hikari, but Hikari goes off to fight Urame. We're like, oh, okay, we wanted to see Hikari fight against Sukuna, but it's okay. Hikari is getting his own big fight. So we focused on Higuruma and Yuji. We were ready to see Higuruma do big things, especially since Sukuna had an interest in Higuruma. What happened to Higuruma? He lasted for about 2 chapters and got humiliated by Sukuna. But it's okay, Higuruma wasn't that big of a character. He only got introduced in the Colon games just like Kashimo. I guess it's kind of acceptable that he lasted so little. He wasn't really hyped up that much. But then we have Yuta jump in, and the hype only keeps building up from there because Yuta is one of the main characters of Jujutsu Kaisen. He is quite literally a main character. The story started out with him, and now we're seeing him battle against the strongest person in the entire verse. Everyone is hyped up to see Yuta fight. Everyone is going crazy about it. And not only is Yuta fighting Sukuna, but Yuji and Yuta together are fighting Sukuna. And everyone is losing their minds. This is the fight we've all been waiting for. And for a few chapters, the fight was really good. Everything was going good. Yuji and Yuta were piecing up Sukuna. They were making actual progress. But what ended up happening in the long run? Sukuna ended up outsmarting them and piecing both of them up together. He hits Yuta with a world slash, completely taking him off the battlefield. Meanwhile, Yuji is too injured to continue fighting. But don't worry, because then Maki comes in, and Maki actually manages to stab Sukuna with her soul-splitting katana, which is supposed to be a one-hit attack. But Sukuna manages to keep his heart manually beating and manages to survive her attack. And it makes sense. Sukuna is the strongest and the smartest sorcerer that has ever lived. He knows the most there is about sorcery. It makes sense for him to know how to manually beat his heart. Okay, there's no problem with that. But it's okay because the Maki hype has been building up slowly throughout the fight. We as fans had not seen her for a very, very long time. And we know that she has been cooking up. And we've been dying to see her jump into the fight. And now we finally have Maki running ones with Sukuna, trying to show off that heavenly restriction and how it's going to go up against the peak of sorcery. And the fight between Maki versus Sukuna is good for a chapter. Maki is holding her own. She's able to dodge Sukuna's cleaves and dismantles. She is being compared to Mahoraga. Everything is good. But then guess what? Maki suffers the same exact fate in the very next chapter that every other character has so far. Sukuna starts blitzing Maki. He starts throwing Maki around. Maki stands no chance against Sukuna, and Sukuna hits her with a black flash, completely rendering her out of the entire fight for good. And then after Maki, we had Kusekabe, and Kusekabe being one of the people to fight Sukuna was honestly a joke. But the reason why we thought that Kusekabe might actually break this cycle that Sukuna has created is because we thought that Kusekabe was a joke. Let me explain my reasoning. All of these characters, Kashimo, Higuruma, Yuji, Yuta, Maki, all these characters that have fought Sukuna, we've had real expectations for them. And in a way to, I guess, divert our expectations, Gege Akutami decided to make their fights all completely one-sided, with them getting a cool moment and then getting completely pieced up by Sukuna right after. With Kusekabe, on the other hand, we had no expectations for him to perform well against Sukuna. So we thought, okay, maybe this character, who we have no expectations for, actually manages to do something interesting in his fight against Sukuna. But then the latest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen came out, and it was the exact same thing that happened every other fight. Kusekabe gets introduced, he has the narrator hyping him up, he gets a cool moment in his fight, and then he gets absolutely destroyed by Sukuna. And Kusekabe didn't even last an entire chapter for him to get pieced up by Sukuna. And at the end of the chapter, we have, out of all people, Miguel to fight Sukuna. Yes, Miguel from Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0. He is the one who is now fighting Sukuna. We have genuinely run out of characters to put up against Sukuna. I don't know if this is Gege Akutami writing himself into a corner or whatever, but the fact that you have to bring back characters from Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0, characters that we have not seen in over 250 chapters, just to fight Sukuna, makes it seem like you are writing yourself into a corner. I'm not even gonna lie. This whole situation in the Jujutsu Kaisen manga is just ridiculous. Like, Kusekabe was already a joke. We were like laughing at it. We're like, haha, Kusekabe is the only one left, whatever. Someone's about to come back and then fight Sukuna after Kusekabe. No one was expecting Miguel to be brought back, out of all people. No one wanted Miguel to be brought back. I mean, not a single person was like, oh yeah, I really hope Miguel, out of all people, comes back and fights Sukuna. Like, yes, Miguel is a cool character, but he has been irrelevant to the entire story since Volume 0. Why bring him back? What is the point? Also, does Jujutsu Kaisen really expect us to have any hype for Miguel's fight against Sukuna? One, no one cares about Miguel. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. No one cares about a character that we have seen one time in the very beginning of the story. And two, this fight is going to go the same exact way as every other fight has gone. For the last 6 months, Jujutsu Kaisen has just been a cycle of repetition. Every fight has gone the same exact way, and there has been nothing new, nothing interesting, nothing intricate about every fight that we've seen since Gojo versus Sukuna. Every fight has simply been a new challenger being introduced to fight against Sukuna, the narrator hyping up that challenger, and then the challenger pulling off some crazy feat against Sukuna to make everyone think that this challenger is actually going to stand a chance. And then Sukuna just completely embarrasses them with no difficulty whatsoever. And that's what's happened with every single fight. Every single fight has been the same exact thing. Kashimo literally falls into that format. Higuruma falls into that format. Yuta and Yuji versus Sukuna falls into that format. Maki falls into that format. Kusekabe falls into that format. Every fight has been the same exact thing, and it's getting boring. It's getting repetitive. It's been repetitive for like the last 3 fights already, but we as fans expected something different, but it's just the same thing. It feels like every single chapter, the story is just getting worse and worse and worse. I already had no excitement going into the Kusekabe versus Sukuna fight, because what do I care about Kusekabe? What has he done throughout the entire story for me to care about his fight with Sukuna? Now you're expecting me to be excited to see Miguel fight Sukuna? Again, a character who we haven't seen since Volume 0? You want me to be excited for this fight? The fight that no one wanted ever? And yes, Sukuna is the strongest. This makes sense that Sukuna is beating everyone. But just because it makes sense does not mean the writing is good. Sukuna can still win in the end. I'm not saying that Maki or Kashima or Higuruma or any of these characters that fought Sukuna were supposed to beat Sukuna. But you can still make every fight unique in some way in order for Jujutsu Kaisen fights not to start feeling repetitive. I mean, think about it. For the last 6 months, Gege Akutami has literally recycled the same exact fight and just put it into a different font. And we've been eating it up this entire time. A lot of people were hating the Takaba versus Kenjaku fight when it was first coming out because of how ridiculous it was and how goofy it was. But honestly, I would love to see that fight right now. A fight like that would feel like a breath of fresh air. It would feel like something new and unique, something we haven't seen before. We honestly should have gotten a full fight between Yuta versus Kenjaku and then just a fight between Takaba versus Sukuna, because at least Takaba would make the fight with Sukuna interesting and not repetitive like all of these other fights have been. And a lot of you may think that I'm hating, that I'm just a hater. I don't know what I'm talking about. Jujutsu Kaisen is my favorite new gen manga. I love this series. But even I have to admit as a fan that it is on a steady decline right now. How many more fights are we going to get that are the exact same thing, that are just copy and pastes of each other? Honestly, right now is a perfect moment in the series to switch over to Hikari versus Urame, because at least that fight is going to be interesting and not predictable. But yeah, Akutami definitely needs to switch something up because it's getting boring. It's been repetitive already. The excitement for these fights is kind of dead by now. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and make sure to like and subscribe and let me know what other videos you guys want to see in the future. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and I'll see you guys on the next one.